Venezuela has been very bad, both in terms of drugs and sending some of the worst criminals anywhere in the world into our country.
Well, President Trump speaking about the dangerous prison gang Tren de Aragua, he says poured into the U.S. under the Biden administration. Those comments coming just hours after announcing the U.S. strike on a suspected drug boat coming from Venezuela. The president sharing this video saying all 11 of the suspected gang members were killed as they were trying to smuggle drugs into the U.S. This happening as Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Mexico, pushing forward with the administration's mission to crack down on illegal immigration and drug flow into the U.S. NewsNation's Ali Bradley is live in Del Rio, Texas, along the border there. And Ali, this is Secretary Rubio's third trip to Latin America as Secretary of State.
Yeah, Nichole, and it might just be his most impactful visit, too, because he just wrapped up a joint news conference with the foreign minister there where the two agreed to work more closely together when it comes to combating the criminal cartels. And that includes stopping the illicit flow of drugs and people into the United States illegally. So the two saying their joint coordination and collaboration will actually help reduce fentanyl trafficking, which is a huge problem, obviously. Rubio spoke with President Sheinbaum earlier today as well. He said it was a very productive meeting with Mexico's president, adding that he's very happy that they have reached a level of, quote, historic cooperation over the last 8 months. Sheinbaum has spoken to Trump 14 times, according to Secretary Rubio. Take a listen to what else the secretary had to say in Mexico City today.
So they were designated as what they are narco-terrorist organizations. So the same information and the same intelligence mechanisms with maybe a higher focus was used to determine that a drug boat was headed towards eventually the United States. And instead of interdicting it on the president's orders, he blew it up. And it'll happen again. Maybe it's happening right now. I don't know. But the point is, the president of the United States is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations.
Okay, so what he's talking about here is this U.S. military strike in the Caribbean, which actually took out 11 suspected Tren de Aragua members. The White House releasing this video here, President Trump confirming a, quote, kinetic strike that destroyed this Venezuelan drug boat leaving Venezuela. It was loaded with drugs and bound for the United States, according to the administration. The president saying, quote, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat. In a true social post, the president called Tren de Aragua a, quote, narco-terrorist organization controlled by Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, responsible for mass murder, drug and sex trafficking, and violence across the Americas. TDA, of course, has been designated as a terrorist organization by the Trump administration. President Trump issuing a warning saying anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States, beware. Of course, Nichole, we want to mention here that no U.S. forces were actually hurt or impacted at all in this operation in the Caribbean. Nichole.
All right, and Ali, federal authorities making another big announcement today regarding drugs coming into the U.S.
Yeah, it seems like we're seeing more and more of these big drug busts, right? Multi-agency effort here on this one. Just moments ago, the federal authorities saying that they had the largest law enforcement bust of precursor chemicals that were headed to a foreign terrorist organization. So it was a multi-agency effort, as I mentioned, seizing 2 shipments of precursor chemicals linked directly to the Sinaloa cartel. So the chemicals originated in China. They made their way to Mexico. Nearly 700,000 pounds of those precursor chemicals were slated to make 420,000 pounds of meth. That value would have been about $569 million. Judge Janine Pirro saying that the Sinaloa cartel is producing 1 ton of meth each and every week. On display behind them, 1,300 barrels filled with those precursors. The judge saying it will take 24 18-wheelers to transport those barrels to a secure storage facility. The acting ICE director also noting the importance of that bust. Take a listen.
Had these precursors made it to their destination, they would have made hundreds of thousands of pounds of methamphetamine with profits of over $500 million, which would lead to more American deaths here, not only in Houston, but all across the country.
I want to make sure that you look at those 1,300 barrels, and I want you to have a visual of dead Americans instead of where those barrels are.
Okay, so Nichole, the Sinaloa cartel also designated as a foreign terrorist organization under the Trump administration, so that allows them to move and strike quicker and seize those assets, and it does allow them to seize assets not on U.S. territory. Nichole.
All right, Allie Bradley live there in Del Rio. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.